Hello, hello. Welcome to the Phoenix Transformation webinar. I am Pennie Wilson and I'm so excited to be with you today. Today we're going to talk about how to rewrite the stories that you believe. So when it comes to the experiences that you're having in life, we'll call them your old life, that you can actually transform them into the life that you desire, the life that you want to live, the life that will bring you joy. I'm going to teach you how to rewrite those stories without creating more damage and more trauma in the process. I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you went to someone to get help with a problem and then it ended up creating more pain because they wanted to help you, but they didn't have a way to create a safe environment for you to be able to go through that emotional processing. I am a certified hypnotherapist, and I have found solutions, principles, and patterns that help you to get to the root cause of what it is that's truly inside of you. Just to give you a little bit of background story, as I was growing up, I experienced some emotional trauma that created pain that I held on to for a long, long time. In fact, so long that I'm 48, 49 years old now. I don't keep track anymore, but just recently, in this past couple of years, I've been able to look at those childhood stories and rewrite them because of my experience with hypnotherapy. So if you're not familiar with hypnotherapy, we're going to talk about that a little bit today and how it is a tool to help you to transform. We're also going to talk about our programs, and I'll share with you at the end what that would look like to move forward with us. And one of the things I want to encourage you today is to look at your own experiences and find out how it is that you can move from where you are now, where you're dissatisfied with where you are now, into a place where you truly can have joy and focusing on what you do want. When my 5 kids were young, I found that I was depressed and I stuffed my emotions a lot. And what happened over time was that by stuffing those emotions, I became emotionally numb. And then occasionally there were eruptions that went from anger to tears, and I was literally emotionally out of control. It was like all of those pressures had built up. I didn't know what to do with the emotions inside of me, and I was so frustrated with not being able to have the answers that I need in life. I had this internal desire that I wanted to live my purpose and become my greatness. I know that sounds like doesn't really make sense, right? But I was in a homeschool experience and they would talk about greatness, and the purpose of a personal education is so that you can develop your gifts and talents and live your purpose and rise to your greatness. So that was like everything that was going on in my mind and the desire burning inside of me. And when it came to being able to move forward in my life where I was right then, I was so stuck. I was in this hole. I felt like there was this, like I had one image of a pit that I was in, and there was me, the little tiny me down at the bottom of the pit, and I was looking up at what I hoped was light, and there was no way out. There was no ladder. There was no tools. I didn't have what I needed in my life to be able to move forward. I had all of these ideas in my head. This was before smartphones, right? When I was raising my kids, I had like a computer in my head, and I knew that I needed something like a smartphone to organize all of my ideas. But of course, I didn't have one. I didn't even have a laptop at the time. So all of these ideas going around in there and no way to organize them. It was crazy. It drove me insane. Not literally, but almost. So that's where I was in the beginning. I was depressed. I would walk around into my house and I would literally look down at the floor all the time. And I didn't know I was looking down at the floor all the time, which is kind of weird now that I think about it. But I was so depressed. I was so focused. Now look at the metaphor to what that would mean. What does it mean to look down all the time? And what does that mean for you in your life? Consider that for me, that meant that I was looking down at my life and looking at all the problems and everything that was wrong. When I was 20-ish, I used to work at a glass factory, and I was the quality control person. The glass would come through the line, and I would circle on the windows the flaws the parts that were wrong. That was a metaphor for me in my life. I was so good at seeing everything that was wrong, right? So that's what it was like when I was focused at everything that was wrong. I was looking down. I would be critical of myself. I would be critical of other people, my children especially. I didn't know how to be a voice of encouragement because of all the heavy emotions that was inside of me. So the focus was down. I was depressed. My emotions were stuck. I didn't know what I needed. I couldn't use my voice to speak for what I needed. I was in an unhealthy marriage and I didn't know how to deal with that conflict. It was a matter of the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I don't know if you've heard those from the emergency response system. What is it called? Parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And when you get into a trauma state, it goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I, at the time, wasn't aware of the fawn, but that's exactly how I lived my life. It was either fight or fawn, one or the other. I was either fighting or I was totally backing down, submitting, cleaning up other people's messes. So it was a very dark time in my life. And as I mentioned in a previous video, I really did seem like Momzilla. And I wasn't able to be the full capable mom that I wanted to be. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but you have this feeling of this potential that's inside of you. You have imaginations. I had imaginations of the person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be the person that would take pictures of their kids and laugh with them. Even before I had kids, I remember in high school, we made this memory book of what your life is going to look like in the future. And so there was this picture of this mom kneeling down in the bathroom with toilet paper strung all over and a couple of toddlers messing things up. And that was one of the pictures I put on my board. And I knew that life would be messy. I knew that it wouldn't be perfect, but she had a smile on her face. So I wanted to be the kind of mom that could take pictures of the kids and laugh with them and play with them. But I didn't know how to play with my kids, because I didn't have that experience as a child to play with my mom. My mom was a working mom and she was gone most of the time. So there was me alone in my house with my 5 older siblings. If you want to learn more about that part of my life, in the Hero's Journey podcast, I give my interview about what my childhood was like and those emotional experiences, the core beliefs that were created for me in my childhood. You can go watch that on the YouTube channel under the podcast playlist. So while I was raising my kids, that's the vision of the kind of mom that I wanted to be. But having all of these heavy emotions inside of me literally stopped me. And it was like I was a human pinball where, like, in my life's experience, like imagine that my life is a bubble and then this experience comes into my life, thoughts, emotions, heart, all of that stuff. Experience comes in and I get triggered by this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's like all of those emotions are bouncing around inside of me like a human pinball machine. And because of all these triggers, these emotional beliefs that I had about myself, beliefs about being insignificant, beliefs about not feeling important, not feeling like I mattered, all of those beliefs were inside of me, and that's what was triggering me, all of the layers of emotions and the past experiences. So that is really what today is about. It's about you being able to recognize those emotions inside of yourself and really, like Charlie in that movie, have this huge desire to get them out, that you want to be able to get clean. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to have emotions flow through me so that nothing got triggered. Here's the contrast. There was a book I read called, it's snowing outside, so I'm watching the snow. A book that I read called, hold on, it's coming, The Untethered Soul. And Michael Singer on the book cover, he talks about what it's like to experience life without triggers. And he says, imagine driving down the road and you see a sign pass and it passes and it's not a big deal. And imagine each of these things as if they were an experience that you have in life. And I know I use the word experience way too much, so just forgive me. But there's something that happens in your life and it passes and you notice it. It's there, but it doesn't trigger you. Each of these experiences brings up emotion. But as those emotions flow through you, they don't trigger you. They don't stop you. He says the opposite of keeping driving past this sign is you're still driving. And then let's say it was a sign that said something that bothered you. And you're still thinking about that as you're driving forward. So that thought is way back in the past, but it's still in your head. And it bugs you and it bugs you and it bugs you, and you're still driving. You can't be present in your own life right there in the moment where you're driving, where you actually are. So he said that's the experience of what it's like to hold on to the past. And in the book, I love it. It's so amazing. I feel like the ultimate goal in life would be to have all of the experiences, whether positive or negative, to pass by, to neither hold on to them, to cling on to them, or to resist them. We tend to resist the negative emotions that come. And I say negative, but I don't really mean negative, because uncomfortable emotions can be positive. They can help us learn more about who we are and what we're born to do. They can help us to recognize what we truly desire. The point of life then, and what I would call the mecca, or the goal of life, is to then experience pleasure or pain, I guess is the easiest way to call it, pleasure or painful emotions, so that you can experience them as a complete, full human being without clinging on to what's desirable or without resisting what's painful. And I think for me, that would be like the ultimate enlightenment type of life to be able to live, is to live with that flow. What is your ultimate? What do you want to get to in life? What do you want to experience? What do you imagine would be the best life that you could ever have? I remember during my third divorce, yes, I've been divorced 3 times. A few years ago, before I found my amazing Kyle husband, now he's my perfect twin flame, I read a book called The Desire Map. It's right here because I keep my books close because I love them. The Desire Map, and she talks about what you truly desire. She talks about wanting to create the best life that you could ever have. And what would that be like? And granted, I understand that if you are in a place where I was, being in that depressed place and looking down all the time at the things that are wrong with your life, you might not, I didn't at the time, have the capacity to be able to imagine fully and completely what it is you truly want. But that's the goal. That's the goal, for you to be able to own your mind, to be able to wake your mind up, to be alive, and to be able to imagine exactly in clear detail what it is you want to create. Because that is the power of creation. Truly, that has been the journey of my life, to go from being a victim to being a creator. And I use these sides of my mind because that's how it's organized. When you join me in the 5-day challenge coming up, I'll be able to share with you more about the pictures that I see in my mind and why I use my hands the way that I do. Anyway, so that's truly going from a victim to creator, is you being able to experience and create what you really want with your life. Because there's things that happen in life to us. And I love the quote that Stephen Covey says. He says, life isn't what happens to us, but how we respond to it. And it really does come down to knowing that life is a choice. What happens in your life is a matter of you choosing what you focus on. Are you going to choose to focus on everything that's wrong? Or are you going to find a way to shift your focus into what you do want instead of what you don't want? And that's all about what I do. That's my passion, my burning desire, my obsessive focus is to help you transform from that mindset of focusing on what you don't want into focusing on what you do want. Awesome. So just to conclude that last part about the intro about me is going from a life of depression to a life of significance. And when I say significance, I just have to clarify that doesn't mean superiority. It just means me knowing who I am and why I'm born, and that I am here to live my purpose. That was the beginning of my journey, that I was depressed because I did not know who I was. I did not believe that I mattered. And significance is one of the 6 foundational needs, which we'll also talk about in the 5-day challenge. And understanding truly what you need will help you to clarify what you want along your journey. But for me, that was depression to significance and really wanting to know what my purpose was. So my question for you now then is, where are you on your journey? And just to give you a big picture overview, there's an analogy that I love called the hero's journey. So just to give you background on what the hero's journey is, a long time ago, there was a guy named Campbell, and he studied cultures all over the world through all ages of time. And he wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I think that's what it's called. And then George Lucas became one of his students, and he studied this pattern of the hero's journey. And then he created the Star Wars series. That's the foundation of what makes a book or a movie great, is it follows along this hero's journey, because I believe it's the internal blueprint of who we believe we are and what we want to achieve as someone that's aspiring to greatness. So the hero's journey is all about someone that begins in their ordinary world, and they have their ordinary routine, and then they have this call of something that they feel that they need to do, and then they go out on an adventure to become someone on the inside, but also on the outside to accomplish this desire that they want to do. So there's 12 points along the hero's journey that you can look at more in detail. But for today, what I would like to share with you is the 3 stages that I have noticed along my hero's journey. So the 3 stages really comprise that first place of being stuck, of looking down, of being depressed. And that will look different for each person depending on what their weaknesses are, what their default wiring is, as I call it. And we'll talk more about that in the 5-day challenge as well, where the default wiring comes from and why we think the way that we think. So that first stage is going to look different for you based on what your gifts, your talents. Yes, your gifts and talents are born out of what you might think is your weakness and how that gets transformed. And for me, it's using my voice and all of those default wirings, the limiting beliefs that I had about using my voice. And now that is my desire and my call, my outward desire to become a speaker that helps to inspire people. So in your depressed state, whatever that looks for you, it might be anxiety, it might be depression, it might be fears and phobias. Whatever those experiences are for you, those emotions and those past experiences, look at where you are and if this is speaking to you about what stage you're in. So this stage would look like someone that is stuck and they don't know the answers. They don't know how to move forward. Their thoughts are continually kind of going downward spirals, lots of heavy emotions, and not knowing how to remove them, not knowing how to process those emotions. So in order to move to the second stage, what happened for me was I found a life coach that I followed for about 10 years. And that second stage is a place where you're learning the tools to process those heavy emotions and get them out of you. There's writing exercises, there's visualization exercises, there's all sorts of things that are out there to help people learn how to process these emotions. And in that second stage then is you really figuring out the tools and applying them so that you can begin to get those negative emotions out of you. And that really is what the second stage is about removing that negative emotion. I use hypnotherapy for that tool because it is the fastest possible way to be able to get those negative emotions out and to really rewrite those stories of the past. We can talk about that more at the end of today to help you to see exactly what hypnotherapy is and if that can be a tool that you would consider using. The second stage is all about making huge efforts to transform and to really be brave, to face your fears. Sometimes there's that skeleton in the closet idea of, I can't look into that place. For me, that was the fear of seeing who I really was and not liking that person. And so that second stage is really deciding to take action and face the cave that you fear. As in the Star Wars movie with Luke, how he goes into the cave and he sees himself in the Darth Vader mask, right? And I think that we all have that fear of, what are we going to see inside of us? And maybe I'm not going to like that person, or maybe there's no worth for that person. But facing that fear, it then dissipates, and then you get to find out the truth about who you really are and the amazing person that you are. This is the stage where you have learned the foundation of your identity, who you are, what you are born to do, and that begins the third stage. The Phoenix is something that's totally inspiring for me. As I went through my third divorce, a good friend gave me a picture of the Phoenix. I had never heard of it before, but she told me about the story of the Phoenix, how it burns itself down, burns down the old part so that it can be reborn to a new part. And I think that's truly what this whole huge transformation journey is about. There's an old part of us, either the fear, whatever is causing the limitations, that old part, burning it down so that you can truly be reborn and create that new part that can fly. Then the second stage is really about burning down that old part and deciding to make that effort, to change your thoughts, to be very diligent in all the tools that you can gain in processing all of those negative emotions. And then the third stage is the Phoenix flying, where you truly are living what you desire. For me, that is building a business, but for you, that could be whatever it is you feel like your purpose is, the thing that you want to do. I've mentioned in another video before, when I was 12, I imagined myself being a speaker because I saw someone else inspiring people. And that was the whisper in my heart that was calling me, that who I wanted to become and what I wanted to do. For you, that might be different. That might be creating something. That might be being a mom. That might be being a good friend. Whatever the whisper it is in your heart, I believe that there is a purpose that you were born for, something only you can do, something that will utilize your gifts and your talents and the unique perspective that you have in the way that you see the world. The third stage is where you are living principles and moving forward, and what I like to call owning your own mind. There's a book that I love, Napoleon Hill. It was originally written as Mental Dynamite. This book, Owning Your Own Mind, talks about creative vision. And I believe that's what the third stage is all about, is using your creative vision, your intuition, your imagination to create the life that you desire and make that contribution to the world. So the third stage is all about the Phoenix flying, and that you're truly creating the life that you desire. You're spreading your wings. You have all of those tools that you've learned to use, and now it's time to fly. One other piece I want to say about the third stage is I believe that each of us, when we give that contribution to the world and we do the thing that we believe is going to make the world a better place, that it's like a puzzle of the whole earth coming together to become whole. This is what the journey is about. It's about us becoming whole as individuals, and it's about us contributing our piece to the world that's going to be part of the solution of what makes the world a better place. And each of those puzzle pieces come together to help the world become whole again. I know it's a Pollyanna perspective, but I guess that's part of who I am. That's okay. I am optimistic that the world can become better as we individually live our purpose. So where does that put you on your journey? I kind of like to give it a number scale of energy levels. So like if we say on the lowest level of the first stage of being stuck would be on a scale from like 1 to 25, something like that. And of course it comes in gradients. It's not all one stage and you're stuck there. And sometimes you can be in 2 stages at the same time, and sometimes you bounce between stages. So just look at where you feel like you resonate with the stages and where your emotional waves are taking you through the day. So the first stage would be like on a number energy scale of 1 to 25, and the second would be like 26 to maybe 75-ish. And then the third stage would be like 76 to 100. Of the percent of the capacity that you truly have for greatness, the way that you can live your purpose and create the life that you desire. That's the 3 stages of the hero's journey, and I would love to know where you are. I would love for you to put into the chat, go ahead and put your number of where you are just on an average basis. Obviously, there's days that are higher and lower. Just on an average, where do you feel like? And if you're struggling with this and your brain is trying to complicate things by analyzing, just close your eyes for a second and ask, what is my number today? And just let your subconscious mind bring up a number for you. 76, 25, 51, whatever number is coming up for you, put that in the chat. I would love to know where you feel like you are in these 3 stages. Okay, let's move on then to rewriting the stories you believe. And as we approach this, let's look at it from a perspective of why would I not want to rewrite the stories I believe? And then we'll go into why would you want to rewrite the stories you believe? So I mentioned it a little bit before about the cave that you fear and that person that you fear that you might see inside, like Luke Skywalker did with seeing Darth Vader in the cave. A second thing that might be stopping you from going into the cave you fear is the fear of Pandora's box, the fear of a deeper internal pain that might be caused by looking at those experiences in the past. I've talked to a few different people that have had unhealthy emotional processing experiences where they felt like there was more emotions exposed than they were able to resolve. So I don't want to throw rocks at anybody that's trying any of those things, but I'll just leave it general to say that that would be like the idea of Pandora's box, where you feel like there's so much junk in there that you're afraid to bring anything out, because if one thing comes out, then everything is going to come out, and then your whole life is going to go into chaos. I will say about that idea is that when going from a stage of disorganization to a stage of organization, there's an amazing video that I saw one time at an event that it was showing a vibration plate and there was salt on top of it. And at different frequencies, the salt would reorganize. So like, let's say a level of 100, it would be in a certain shape. And then the vibration plate would get turned up from 100 to 150. It would disorganize and reorganize into a new shape. And then the notch again, the vibration plate gets turned up a little bit more to 200. The salt disorganizes and then reorganizes into a new shape. This principle is absolutely true when it comes to life, is that when we're in a state of disorganization, there is going to be that chaos in the middle. But in the rebirth stage, it's going to reorganize into a new shape, into a new way that you can see the world. Sometimes this happens in your thoughts, and sometimes it happens in your emotions. But either way, you're creating that internal world to be the way that you want it to be, because our external world is created based on what we think and what we believe, especially what we believe about ourselves. I know for me in my beginning stage one, when I was depressed and looking down, it was as if I was in a room and there was a monster over there in the corner, but I was sitting there watching TV. So that's metaphorical, right? So the distraction, whatever I'm looking at, is what is distracting me. For me, what that looked like in my life was I was ignoring the problem. I was ignoring what was really wrong. I was minimizing my situation. I wasn't validating my own concerns. I wasn't speaking for what I needed. So the application of what that looks like for you individually is going to be different. Think about when you ignore your problems, it's as if you're driving on a road that has a bridge and the bridge is out. So you're driving towards something where there will be an eventual explosion. That can look like an internal implosion or an external explosion in your life. But either way, those emotions, whatever is happening in your life and the triggers that you have, each experience that you have is getting piled on more and more and more and creating more pressure in those emotions. And something has got to give at some point. There has to be a pressure release. That's the way emotions work. So those experiences will continue to build up until there is that explosion or implosion. If you're like I was, driving down that road toward the bridge that's out and ignoring those problems, you might have a sense like I did that you're like, this can't go on forever. So that's kind of what it's like to not face your fears and to kind of stay in that place where I don't want to change. This might also look like numbing, like you're using distractions or you're using addictions to numb whatever is happening. And I talk about in my book what that really is like emotionally. In your heart is basic needs that you have as a person. And it's as if one of those needs is, let's say, a circle shape. And when that need is met, you feel loved, right? You feel whole. But if you were to take an addiction and put it into that hole, you can see that it actually doesn't fill up the hole all the way, but it temporarily eases the pain. So having something in that place is a temporary fix, a Band-Aid. Instead of temporary fixes, instead of Band-Aids, instead of ignoring the problem, what that would look like in actually creating a solution would be something like removing the sliver. You've probably had a sliver before. So imagine a sliver in your finger, and if it stays in there long enough, and if it's deep enough, it will create an infection. And that's your body's way of creating that pressure. Think about the way your emotional pressure is created of, I don't like this feeling. All of those feelings that come up, your body's going to do the same thing with the infection in your hand. It's going to create pressure and create that pussing and the oozing to try to push out the sliver. And it's painful to take the sliver out. It is. I totally understand it. But think about once that sliver is removed, what can then happen, right? The sliver is removed and then the finger can start to heal. The skin comes back together. The body starts repairing itself. That is the same when it comes to emotional wounds. The things that we hold inside are painful. They'll continue to create more pressure until it gets to the point where something erupts. But that doesn't have to be the case. When you face the cave that you fear, it's like you're taking that sliver out and you're removing it so then you can become whole. The first thing in being able to go through that process is recognizing what the problem is. I remember back in the beginning, I went through all sorts of focusing on the problem and really digging in and analyzing and studying it to try to figure out what problems I saw in the world. And that's emotionally the first thing that we need to do, is to try to recognize what the problem is, what it is that hurts. Because typically when we ignore problems, they're going through us like that pinball machine. We're having these outside explosions, but inside we're not taking the time to look at really what's happening. So that first step then is learning to recognize what is going on inside of me. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? I will say and acknowledge that if you've been in a state of emotional numbness, just like the body, when it comes out of that state of numbness, it is going to go through that period of pain. Just be prepared for that and know that going from these stages of chaos, it will be painful, but it will reorganize into a higher state of vibration, into a higher way of living. That's just the natural process of how our emotions work. So getting out that negative emotion is the process of first recognizing what is happening. So another reason why you might want to move forward is if you feel like you're driving down this road toward that bridge that's out and going toward the cliff, opposite to that is one of prevention. And I don't know if you've heard the saying that says an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But when you can look at what the problem is in its baby state, you won't have to deal with that mass problem down the road of huge explosion of whatever that looks like in actual reality. So recognizing what the root cause of the problem is what can help prevent future problems. I think partially because of my tendency to focus on problems, that has become a gift, that I have a mental process that I go through in order to be able to recognize problems and to be able to get down to their root cause. So imagine a tree. Imagine that tree, and all of the branches in the air is like the symptoms that you're experiencing. All of the pain points. It could be phobias, it could be depression, and those things do go very deep emotionally, but in a problem-solving state, they are a surface symptom. And then it comes down to the core and the trunk of the tree, which is like our identity and our character and the way that we think. That trunk is what gives stability to the tree. It's what gives it strength. And then going down into the roots are into the paradigms that we have about the way that we see the world. The roots of a tree are invisible, and the way that we think sometimes is invisible to us. We can't see, like imagine you're wearing glasses. Often we don't see what the glasses look like that we have on our own face until we look in the mirror, right? So the paradigms that we have are like glasses, and they are invisible to us. And growing in a state of awareness to become aware of what your beliefs are is really digging into the roots of what you believe and why you believe it. And that's really the point of the 5-day challenge, is to dig into what your beliefs are and to question your assumptions, to discover why you believe what you believe about who you are and about the way that the world works. So getting to the root cause is one of my huge motivators of why I want to move forward, because it's like removing that sliver. You truly are able to get the problem out and resolve it so that you can heal and become whole. Another reason why I am motivated to face that cave and to be able to move forward in my personal transformation journey is because I want to live in that flow, to be able to experience emotions to their fullest and to be able to focus on what I want to create One thing I've discovered is that desire is like a door. And when you can mentally focus on truly what your heart desires, that doorway opens up to be able to lead you to what your purpose is and how you can contribute to the world. In order to move forward and live that greatness, to become the phoenix that's flying, only you can decide. You have to decide that you're done with that past life. When you decide that you are ready to burn down your old self, to let go of the past, then your desire is big enough. Your desire will burn inside of you all of those old parts, and you'll be able to let go of the past and rewrite the stories. So that is absolutely the number one secret, is that your desire is the magic of you creating the life that you desire. When you have that desire burning inside of you, you decide what you want, and you are the expert of your life. It does take guides to be able to help us to move forward and give us outside perspectives, but it's you being in the driver's seat, taking responsibility for what you want, and telling yourself that this does matter, because you matter. You do. So, what are your options then? If you have decided to move forward, to take action, to figure out the way to burn down that old self, to create that new self, to become that phoenix flying and live your purpose, what are your options? Let's go there. I believe when it comes to deciding your next step of what that looks like for you in creating wholeness in your life is listening to that inner voice and finding out, where do I need to go? What do I need to do to take one step forward? For me, in the very beginning, I knew that I was stuck. I knew that I needed help, and I knew that I could not do it alone. I was so broken, and I recognized that. So there's lots of different books that I have been through to learn. Education is an amazing journey. And like I said, I have gone through that journey by listening to that voice inside of me. What's that one next step? Also, another option that I went through, and you probably have also, is life coaching and talking to different mentors that help you to look at your life from an outside perspective. I followed a life coach for more than 10 years, and it was amazing. All of the insights that opened up to me, the ways that I was able to gain tools to process my emotions. I believe in a transformation journey that it takes both a conscious and a subconscious experience to really create a deep, permanent, lasting change and get to that root cause. So for me, life coaching and education and books was a part of that the learning process. And to really get to the root cause and rewrite the stories, it takes a subconscious process as well. Some people do this through prayer and meditation. Another option is traditional therapy. I have done traditional therapy over the years, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. It's a little bit of a hit and miss process. There's a study that I found in school, hypnotherapy school, that talked about the comparison between traditional therapy and hypnotherapy. And it said that those that went through 600 sessions of traditional therapy experienced a 23% improvement. And those that went through 6 sessions of one-on-one private hypnotherapy experienced 93% improvement. And the reason for this isn't necessarily that one is better than the other, but traditional therapy only talks to the cognitive mind, unless you're doing something like EMDR, which does get into the subconscious. From my personal experience, as well as a few other friends that I've talked to, EMDR creates an emotional exposure that it doesn't close back up. So just cautionary tale there, be careful with what you choose. But in traditional therapy, I was able to find a therapist during my 3rd divorce that really was able to help me recognize all of the core beliefs that I had held on to since childhood, which I really didn't know were there. He was able to help resolve it a little bit, but it has been through hypnotherapy that in the last couple of years, I have really been able to rewrite those stories. I found hypnotherapy because I wanted to find the fastest result in the shortest amount of time. I'm one of those people that just craves big results. And I believe that's why I was led to hypnotherapy, because like I just mentioned with that study, in 6 sessions, people experienced a 93% improvement. That is huge. And I have seen that in my own personal results as well as the results of my clients. You're able to, in a hypnotherapy experience, you're able to get down into the subconscious mind and really recognize what those root core beliefs are that are causing the pain. It's been through hypnotherapy that I've really been able to look deeply into those childhood experiences and rewrite those core beliefs. I like to say that it's never too late to have a good childhood. And that is really because of the work that I do as a hypnotherapist. So, what are some beliefs that you have about hypnotherapy? Let's go into there. Let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. Let's first go into what it isn't. Hypnotherapy is often believed in the public opinion to be a type of entertainment, and a lot of people have seen hypnotherapy or hypnosis on stage. So stage hypnosis is actually different than hypnotherapy. Stage hypnosis is created for the purpose of entertainment, and those that volunteer to go on stage, they really do know that they're going up there to perform, and they're willing to perform. And the hypnotherapist on stage is able to recognize signs in the audience for those people that are very suggestible, that will follow their instructions. So just to clarify that those are two opposite things. Hypnotherapy is created for the purpose of you, in my definition, getting answers inside of yourself. It's a guided conversation that we're able to go into your subconscious to speak to parts of you, the parts that are having pain. Typically, a part of you is experiencing an emotion, and that emotion is wrapped around an experience. Hypnosis really is a normal process that happens. It's a theta state in our minds that we go through every day when we go from awake to sleep. It's just that in-betweener stage where we're kind of dreaming and imagining. What it feels like to be hypnotized is that you're having that dreamy state and you still have thoughts, you're still thinking, you're still imagining, but that cognitive critical part of your mind is quieted down so that you can really listen intently to what's happening in your imagination. I guess the best way to help you to see what hypnotherapy is to just tell you the stories of what my clients have experienced. So there's a couple amazing stories that I would love to share with you with what clients have experienced during a hypnotherapy session. And the purpose of why I share these stories is to help you to see where the subconscious mind is leading the client. I, as the hypnotherapist, ask guided questions, and the client's job is to trust and allow the thoughts and images that come to their mind and have that conversation by sharing what they're experiencing. One thing that's unique about me is that I don't use a script anymore. I do have 6 different types of sessions that we'll go through with each client to help them to look at one problem from different angles. And the pattern that I use helps me to be able to guide a client through that safe emotional processing experience without using a script. The first one I want to tell you about is a client that was experiencing imposter syndrome. And it was amazing because the fears that she talked about before the session actually became different as we were talking to that part during the session. So it's interesting how the conscious mind has one perspective of what you're experiencing in your life that you want to change. And then as we go into the session, the subconscious part gets to share what it is experiencing and what the problem looks like. So before the session, she felt like she had to be an expert and she had to perform according to the expectations of everyone else around her. And she also said that she was afraid of making mistakes and afraid of being embarrassed. And she was terrified of other people seeing who she really was because she didn't want them to see her flaws and her mistakes. So after we got into the session, we had this conversation with this part of her. It was so cool. Her imagination, she brought out that this part of her was dancing, and it had to keep dancing, or it was afraid and terrified of what would happen if it stopped. So we went into that conversation of, what are you afraid of? What will happen if you stop dancing? And that took her into a childhood experience of when her mom had disciplined her for something. And understand that when a parent disciplines a child, it's not necessarily the parent's fault, because children interpret things only in the way that, do they love me or do they not love me? A child is so simple and beautiful in the way that they interpret experiences, but as we grow up, that can cause problems because we hold on to those core limiting beliefs. This part of her that was continuing to dance and was afraid to stop dancing, we talked to that experience and found out what was happening in why they were afraid to stop dancing. And it took them back to that memory of the parent that had disciplined them. And when they shared their disappointment of what the child had done, the child interpreted that as, they don't love me anymore. I'm a disappointment. And they saw that as a withdrawal of love, which is one of the two major fears that all of us face, that removal of love, and how that connects to our feeling of acceptance and belonging. So the conversation that she was able to have with her child self was so beautiful. I had her imagine that she was the rescuer going to talk to her child self, and she had conversations back and forth. And what she discovered was that her child was safe to make mistakes, and that she couldn't ever have done anything that would make her unlovable, and that she was always whole, and that making mistakes is safe because we get to learn from them. She had an amazing experience being able to talk to her child self and create that conversation of healing. And she was also able to talk to that part of her that was afraid to stop dancing and to give it permission to relax and rest and to do what it actually needed to do for itself. So this is the subconscious leading the client to the answers that they need. And it's a beautiful blend between the client showing up 100% and the hypnotherapist showing up 100% to actually create that connection, to find those answers inside of you. So does that help you to see how amazing hypnotherapy is and how your subconscious mind can guide you through the answers? I, as a hypnotherapist, get to ask questions and be a guide to help you to get the answers inside of you, but it is your desire inside of that experience that really is the magic. One other story I want to share with you about a client that had a phobia, claustrophobia, and he was afraid of small, tight spaces. The reason for that was that he was stuck in a cave when he was 12. From what I could gather in the experience, he might have actually been pinned down in the rocks. So the reason why this was causing a problem in his life was that he needed to be able to go into a hyperbaric chamber to work on some health issues that he was having. And the hyperbaric chamber was triggering him. He said when he reached out and he would touch the edge of the chamber, it would trigger him and feel like he was back in this cave. So during the exploratory part of the conversation, we really explored what emotions he was having, what images that was attached to, and what he wanted to feel instead. One thing that was interesting about this client is he said he had never allowed himself to relax. And he had been a very hard worker, doing the things that he needed to do to be able to pay the bills, and relaxing was not a part of what he allowed himself to do. So I love that during the session, we were able to create a safe place for him. And I guided him to use his imagination to connect back to the emotions of that safe place that we talked about. And for him, that it was a mountain stream where he was fishing on a river. And he hadn't allowed himself to do that since he was a boy. And he was much older now, 70, 80. And so, So we created that safe place for him in his imagination that he can go back to anytime that he needed to relax, anytime he was feeling this panic, stress, and anxiety, especially when it was triggered by that hyperbaric chamber. So we found out exactly what it is that he needed. And then I invited him to go back into that experience of being back in the cave when he was 12. It was so cool because we went through step by step, and again, not having a script, you never know for sure what's going to happen, but it was so cool to see what came up for him. And the ideas that came to my mind is that he was able to, again, become the rescuer for his child self. And he talked to his child self to help him to get free inside of that cave, to wiggle and move and get out of that tight place where he was trapped. And then he was still inside of the cave, and I asked him if he felt safe, and he said at first no. And then we had him imagine using the power of his mind to think what he wants to think, which was the inspiration I had that morning before the session, that this would be his superpower that would allow him to transform this fear into what he wanted to feel, which was relaxation and peace. And so he was able to use this power to think what he wants to think inside of the cave, and to imagine the walls of the cave not as the cave but as the hyperbaric chamber. So we change the ideas of panic and fear and stress, and we change those words and those images into now a protective bubble, into the place that was holding him and protecting him and healing him and keeping him safe. So you see how we removed the negative emotion and the negative association with that cave and put it into that positive, the way that it was holding him, the way that it was benefiting him, shifting his focus from what he didn't want to what he did want. And that's the beauty of what we can do in a hypnotherapy session, to really help you to get into the emotions, the thoughts, and the images that are creating that experience for you, the attachments of what you fear, and then letting go of that fear and creating truly what you desire. My goal in everything that I do in hypnotherapy is to help you own your own mind. A lot of people think that hypnotherapy is a way that the hypnotherapist controls the mind of the other person. But that is absolutely not the case, especially when it comes to what I do, because everything I do is for you to become independent, for you to grow in your ability to own your own mind, so that you can allow your mind to become alive and create that life that you desire. So hopefully you can see how powerful hypnotherapy is and how it truly can help you rewrite the stories that you believe. It is the fastest thing that I have ever found to be able to get down to the root cause and really help you to understand what's happening in your mind, your heart, and your body. And that's the definition of Kokoro. That's why we named our company Kokoro Hypnotherapy, is because it means the combination of heart, body, mind, and soul. And it really is our desire to create wholeness for you, to be able to experience that flow of life and to live your purpose. Awesome. So can I share with you why I am doing what I'm doing? One of the core motivating factors is being able to use my voice for good. And why that is so important is because when I was a teenager, this is kind of hard to talk about. When I was a teenager, my mom was being abused by my stepdad, and there was one day when I heard her getting beat, and he had locked her in the bathroom, and I was sitting outside in the hall listening to him beat her. And what's so painful about that experience is that, come to think of it, I need to have a hypnotherapy session on this experience. What was so painful about that experience was that I sat there in the hall not knowing that I should have called the police. not using my voice, being afraid to take any action. And that's really what it's like to be in that first stage of those 3 stages that we talked about earlier, is that there's something horrible that's happening to you and you're not able to take action against it. So that being the key motivating factor of why I want to use my voice to inspire other people to not only stop what they don't want, but to create what they do want. One of the visions that I have is being able to create an event, and I even have a date set on it. It is March of 2025. And that event is going to be a place where people can use their voice to share a message and to declare their victory. For people that decide right now that they want to move forward with us, if they're in that first stage or the second stage or even the third stage, if you decide that you want to move forward and go through this transformation journey, then this event is for you to declare what your hero's journey looked like, to have gone from that beginning place of pain into this beautiful place of creating and being who you truly are. So that is a key motivating factor for me in what I want to create and how I want to inspire people to use their voice and why it matters. There's a song I even play every single morning that's like the victory dance that we're going to do across the stage. It makes me imagine it and remember it. It's so fun. So can I share with you then the strategy of how we're going to get to this event in March of 2025 for you to be able to actually create your hero's journey and transform, to find the old part of you, the phoenix, and to be reborn from the ashes so that you can live as your true full self. The first thing that we're going to do is a 5-day challenge. In this challenge, you're going to learn the foundational principles, and I've mentioned a few different things today during the webinar that we're going to go over, but really this is the foundation and digging into the roots of what you believe and why you believe it. When I was transforming from depression to significance, I learned through my garden principles that helped me to transform the way that I think. It helped me to see life in a whole different way. Pain was something that I fought against a lot. Frustration was something that I fought against a lot. How long am I going to have to deal with this? Why do I have to do this? All of the limiting, heavy emotions that went along with my victim mindset, those things were transformed by understanding the laws and the principles that I learned in the garden. And that's what I'm going to teach in the 5-day challenge. Those principles that transformed my paradigms and my beliefs into a way that helps me to open up and understand what are the laws that are governing success and transformation, and how can I work within those laws and align to them so that I'm not fighting against something like gravity and wishing gravity didn't exist because it was bothering me, you know? So the 5-day challenge is going to be something amazing that will open your eyes to see a new perspective, because it's the way that I learned it in my garden. These principles will help to divide the darkness from the light. It will help you to see clearly your thoughts and your emotions so that you can learn to take that state of chaos and reorganize it into what you truly desire. It's really going to help you to find your superpowers. There's things that you can focus on, things that you can believe that give you a strong foundation of truly knowing what your powers are and knowing what you can let go of so that you're not focused on something that you can't control. We created a landing page just for the 5-day challenge. You can click on the link below and explore more about what it looks like in each of the 5 days, as well as decide which payment option you want to go with. There's a VIP option as well as a general admission. If you want to just come for the teaching portion, or if you want to be there for the VIP portion to be able to ask questions and really dig into the application of what these principles look like in your life. I'll also go over briefly what our programs look like. We do have one-on-one hypnotherapy as well as life coaching. Sometimes those are combined, sometimes those are separate depending on what the client wants. Our first stage is obviously this webinar that you are joining today. And then the 5-day challenge is the second thing that is able to help you to gain the foundation that you need. After the 5-day challenge, I will invite you to a 6-week program. And in that program, we'll go deep into a hypnotherapy experience as well as the life coaching experience so that you can learn to own your own mind, both cognitively and subconsciously, so that these two things are married together and you're able to dig into really understanding what the principles of transformation are. So one of the things that I use in each of the sessions is called the 4 R's process. And we'll go deeply into that in the 5-day challenge. And then in the 6-week program, we'll go into the application of it to do a done with you experience so that you can see and feel what that is like for you. After that 6 weeks, it's my hope that you'll be able to have your own meditation experience with self-hypnosis so that you can do this for yourself. And then we do have after that a supportive community program that will include group hypnotherapy sessions as well as listening to recordings in our app. The whole process from beginning to end is a transformation path for you to be able to go from depression to significance, whatever it is that you want to create and do in your life, to find that path to get those answers inside of you. A lot of people make hypnotherapy sound mysterious, and they think that psychology is something that's really complicated, but it is really basic and simple. The way to program your own mind is through images, words, and emotions. And by joining us in our program, you're going to be able to truly understand what that means for you in your thoughts, your heart, and your body. This is really about you choosing to take that step, to take action and move forward, to decide to burn down that old part of you that's causing that pain, and to really let that ashes sink down into the ground and let it give you a new birth, a new life, so that you can experience a life of wholeness, a life where you feel fulfilled, where you feel that feeling of significance and you know who you are and why you're here. This is a place where you are going to be able to experience growth and look at your past and the pains that you have in a whole new perspective that help you to see the benefit and the progress that you're making because of the hardships that you're experiencing. It's a matter of focus and it's a matter of perspective. And when you join us in our program, you're going to be able to have your paradigms transformed in a way that you didn't see life before, in a way that instead of looking down, you're going to be able to look up and really be able to experience what it is like to have a life that you desire to create. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect. It doesn't mean that you have everything you ever wanted, but it does mean that you know that you are worthy, that you can have what you desire, and you are using your mind to continually imagine and attract those things that you are creating. This is about you getting behind the driver's wheel. It's like you have a Ferrari that's your car, your mind, and it might have been, run off the road and doing something that you don't want it to do, but you have the power inside of you. Your mind is so amazing. The capacity and the potential is there. It's just a matter of you getting behind the driver's seat and choosing to take responsibility and learning to control your own mind. I believe the point of life is to take responsibility because that's been my journey. A victim is someone who does not take responsibility, who blames everything on everyone else and it's everybody else's job. just like where I was when I was building my first garden box. Talk about it in my book. But I was waiting for my then husband to build the box for me, until I decided I faced the fear of using a power saw for the first time. I cut my own boards and I screwed them together, and I did what I needed to do to take responsibility for my own life. You find yourself in a place of depression or fears or being stuck. I believe it's because of the lies that we believe that are keeping us from really knowing who we are, from really knowing the truth about what's inside of us and what we're born to do. Only you can make that decision to move forward. When it comes to you living your purpose and doing that thing inside of you that is longing to come out, creating that thing that expresses who you are and that contributes to the creation and the expansion of the universe, when it comes to doing that thing for you, only you can decide. You are the expert of your life. Only you know what's in your heart, and only you can bring that longing out. You have to decide what matters most for you. No one else can tell you that. It's really looking back to that beginning stage of that phase 1 and deciding if you want to stay where you are right now and keep looking down, or if you want to take action and move forward and live a life of significance. This is the call of greatness. This is why I want to call you forward to find out what is inside of you, because there is an amazing person in there with incredible potential. Just like I saw in myself way back in the beginning of my journey, I saw that person inside of me that had that incredible potential, and it's inside of you too. I am here to support you. I'm so excited that you have joined us today, and I look forward to seeing you in the 5-day challenge. Have an amazing day.